I want to throw a little funsy out there for you. Okay. So while I was writing, and I've become a fan, which I'd love to continue talking with you more about this subjective eye and objective we in the third eye, sort of the jumbotron of our life. When we hop out of ourselves and have a look, or we project forward in our lives and say, who am I in 10 years? Or what would my eulogy be? You see, I write a lot about these things in the book. But while I was writing, I hopped out. I gave myself the pleasure one night after a few sips, and it was late at night. And mind you, the most trouble, I'm happy to say this, the hardest thing about going to write this book for me was making myself go to bed. I was putting 17-hour days in, and I was just like, you got to get some sleep. But anyway, one of these nights where I was in the fever pitch on fire writing, I wrote down I hopped outside of myself and said, I'm going to write reviews from people that I think this is what they would say about this book after reading it. And this is one of them.
That's a great way to become aware of your audience, or of the audience you want to have. Well, and you have to speak to an audience when you're writing, obviously.
Well, it's a very subjective experience, but I think there is another, as you said, the good thing about talking to oneself in the third person is it's a different view of awareness. Mm-hmm. It's an objective awareness back at like, oh, am I actually doing what I intended to do? Is what I intended actually being recorded? Is what being recorded actually what's being received? There could be a lot of gaps in between those things, and I'm trying to close those gaps, right? So I hopped outside of myself and wrote what I thought you would say about Green Lights, and Matthew McConaughey, the author. It's entrance level understanding to masterclass psychology delivered in a folk song. I mean, the guy's got the gift of gab, man. What can I say? Jordan Peterson.
That's quite remarkable, because that is very close to what I thought. You know, so I think you nailed it. It's very difficult to put forward a message without being propagandistic, and the best way to do that is to tell stories. And your book is full of stories, and the stories seem to me to add up to a life well lived, and that's a good model. And so it's a model, but it's also not put forth as a model, so it doesn't suffer from the flaws that might come along with that putting forth. You know, and I guess that's because you stayed contemplative. I mean, one of the things I've tried to do in my lectures is to remember that I'm lecturing to me as well. You know, I'm part of the audience. If I'm talking about how we might behave, I mean we. I don't think that I'm outside of the problems that I'm discussing.
Those two are not a contradiction. If more of us can understand that, we're talking to ourselves as well. Yes.
Well, it takes the sting out of things, and it keeps you on the ground. So, well, I think that's quite funny that you wrote that review, and it's also quite funny that it is in alignment with what I thought when I read the book. I should show the book again, since this is a good time to do that.